Hi, I'm Sydney Robertson,
And I'm Amy Kiernan.
and Reinventing the Algorithm is our invitation to you to reimagine work and life with intention, purpose, and a sense of freedom.
Together, we're going to explore what it means to show up as our true selves. And so, this is for anyone that's ready to create a more meaningful, fulfilling journey on your own terms. So, today we're going to maybe explore the fear of the unknown and the uncertainty that we can feel when we leave something that, even if it doesn't suit us anymore, like the corporate world, for example, or a job or whatever it might be, there's still that discomfort that comes from stepping into the unknown. And so today we're going to dig into that.
Absolutely.
For me, leaving a job that I had been in and a company that I had been at for nearly 11 years was very destabilizing, but I knew that that was going to happen. I I like to call it like this self-imposed identity crisis
Mm,
because I knew, how fused my identity was with my work, and I knew that I didn't want it to be like that anymore. And so, I made a very conscious decision to step into the unknown because I knew that I was changing and just evolving into something that wanted more. And part of me, even as I'm saying this out loud to you, is wondering maybe I needed a little bit of uncertainty, or I needed a
mm,
little bit of like fear of the unknown
right.
to actually give me the momentum or the, energetic kind of push to step into the next level of what I'm doing. And
Right.
the fear can be a great motivator for that.
It's a motivator for most things in life, don't you think? It,
Yeah.
it really is. It truly is.
What about you? What do you think? Like, what do you think the corporate world gave you?
I think a big one for me is validation. So, at Twitter, for example, we had our OKRs, all of our quarterly, assessments, whether we were, receiving them from our management team or if we as managers were, um, giving feedback back to our ICs. I think I would seek my validation of accomplishments through, again, how I was doing, whether it was numbers focused or whether it was getting a great review from a manager or from a peer. And I think, coming into this space where I'm on my own and I'm navigating it with some amazing women, I truly have to root inside of me for my own validation, for my own identity. And that's been probably the toughest is not having someone saying, yes, you're measuring up great against this metric, X, Y, and Z. There's no path that's been written for me, right? It's all new. So I've got to basically trust myself. And again, fear comes into it because there's that fear of the unknown, but realizing I'm enough and I'm gonna, I'm gonna be okay.
Yeah. Oh my God, that's such a good one. I didn't even think about that, but you're so right. Like, external validation is such a scaffold
Mhm,
for us. I mean, in
mhm,
the corporate world, you are given a ladder to climb, and you know exactly where the ladder is going. And if you have a good manager, they're probably telling you very clearly, what it is that you need to work on, or areas of development, areas of strength.
mhm.
And you're always, everything about you is reflected back through like a positive or a negative lens. And to step outside of that and not have, like, the recognition alone is huge. And not having any accolades, not having any accomplishments, that can be externally measured is so tricky. It's funny. I remember when we went to London last month and we were on stage, doing the Bold event with Amy
Mhm,
Dubbs,
mhm.
and we were speaking, and it had been quite well, I guess actually I had spoken in Toronto in September, but it felt like it had been a while since I had done something that put you, it kind of in the spotlight in a sense, right? Where it stretches you
Mhm.
and it kind of makes you feel a bit afraid. But then once you do it, it becomes kind of this thrilling thing that you're like so proud of yourself that you did. And
Yes.
I remember being on stage with you and just being like, oh
Mhm.
my God, I miss this. I miss this sense of
Yes.
like sharing what I've learned, in the 20, plus years that I've been working and learning and growing and like all of the things. And I suppose when I finished up with Twitter, I kind of took some time to really, think about what I wanted to do next. And I didn't push myself into um, experiences that were super new because I didn't really know what I wanted to do. I was very much in a
Mhm.
liminal space.
Mhm.
And I knew that it was going to be something to do with coaching and helping people and making sense of things, which is like totally my vibe. But I didn't know what that would look like. And I also was grieving a big loss, and a huge identity shift
Mhm.
that I didn't really know what to do with. And so, by the way, I don't know if you can hear Henry, but for anyone listening, that's my dog just in the background. um, but yeah, and I remember being on stage and just having that moment of just being like, oh my God. And I know it was the energy of like being next to you and being next to
Mhm.
Amy and just having this like feeling of like being supported by all these incredible women that were around us and men and everyone who had just, all come together to learn and grow together. But it's so true how so much of our sense of okayness, sense of worth, sense of identity, particularly when you're in an environment like a corporate world and even in a lovely corporate environment like Twitter was for so long, where we felt so safe and so connected to the purpose, it still in a way conditions you to look outside of yourself for
Mhm.
validation or for a sense of worthiness.
It's so true. It's so true. I mean, that's probably the biggest shift. Do you feel like then that moment on stage that we had together in March
Mm.
was your first sort of aha that you're back in a collective again or back in an organization of some sort?
Oh my God, that is so funny the way you say that because that's exactly what I felt. I even remember sending somebody a voice note saying it felt like a threshold moment for me because I really think that that was the part of me that really felt like I had stepped through a door and that I was ready to now, full steam ahead go into my business, exploring what that would look like, um, you know, what kind of coach I wanted to be, what kind of business consultant, strategist, like what can I offer? What can I give to the world in this new iteration? And all of that came, I think, from stepping through the doorway. And what you've just said about the fact that did I feel like I was in a corporation? It did feel like that in the sense that all of you guys felt like my colleagues in the most beautiful, fabulous way. Because,
Mhm.
because that's how you and I met is through work. And I think so many of us meet our most beloved souls through work.
It's true. Well, I mean, just think about the leapfrogs we made in as an entity for Bond to Bloom and for our own businesses. I mean, that's where ideation for my pieces of element with Jen came up right around our app
Mm.
and next structure for that. For you, I remember getting into an Uber with you and you were like, oh my gosh, like this new idea. I was listening to, Diver CEO and this new idea came up. Like I just felt like when we were
Mhm.
physically in the same space, like we would be in a corporate environment, you can those
Yes.
bounce those ideas off someone. And it's great to have obviously voice notes and all those things. They're so helpful, especially when we're spaced
Mhm.
across the globe. But there's something just so energetic about being in the same
Mhm.
space with like-minded individuals and just having that support and that structure. It really does lift us up.
Totally. I think that it is hands down one of the most game changing things that I have done in this journey to becoming an entrepreneur and understanding what I want from it and who I want to be and what I want to achieve is the people that I've surrounded myself with. Because I
Mm,
can't imagine that any of this would be possible if we were doing it on our own. Can you imagine?
no, no, I don't. I'll be honest. I don't even know if I would be here, 8 plus months later, still doing this if I didn't have the support of the network like the Boldies, and working with
Mm,
you and Danielle
yeah.
and with Jen and like it does. It's the connectivity, right? We're meant to be in communities, right? It's part of our grid.
Mm, yes. It gives us a sense of safety, I think, this sense of
Mhm.
connection where we are able to I don't know. I think it's like maybe a sense of reflection off other people. If you're just doing it on your own, it's kind of like too much in the void, where it's just
Mhm.
like, I don't even know, like, what am I doing here? Whereas
Mm.
I think what we've been able to do for each other and what we've done and what I've certainly received from, the Bowl Group and Amy and, other people as well is this sense that they see me, right? And they see what I'm
Yes.
doing. And in a way, it makes me feel like what I'm doing then is real,
Mhm.
you know?
And the whole concept of ethical pods, right? That we talk about just lifting each other up in a way that's meaningful. And it just, as we
Yeah.
launch our businesses, I remember the first time, I think it was when I did my first big announcement post for me, which is huge because I've never really had a voice on LinkedIn before. And the pit in my stomach when
That was
I,
a great post.
well, thank you. But when I pressed like
Mm.
post, and then I'm like, oh my God. And I remember putting it, as Amy Wegener told me to do, in our bold community, and just said, oh, please, like, let me know what you think and support. And just the level of just people just jumping in there. And I've seen it across all of our businesses, right? Just getting in there and
Mhm.
having that sense of lifting each other up. It just, that's the
Mm.
biggest part, like you said. I mean, I wonder for people that are
You went
listening,
viral.
who are, ah!
You did.
Well,
You literally
it
went
was the
viral with
most
that
likes I've
post.
received in a post to date, but, um, I'm just thinking, as people that are listening and are contemplating, like they're,
Mm.
entrepreneurial curious, yes.
Oh
Um,
my god, I love this. Wait, entrepreneurial curiosity. That could be the name of a podcast in itself.
yeah, it's like sober curious, but if you're
Yes.
dabbling or thinking of dipping your toe in the entrepreneurial waters. I mean, we are very fortunate that we obviously have the network that we do and that we built it. But for those out there,
Mm.
and I think it's important as we go on this journey together in this pod is just sharing too, like tips to find those networks, right? Because not everyone has them.
That's a really good point. So, I mean, what would you say then? Like, I guess when I think about how I came across this, the groups that I'm
Hmm.
part of now,
Hmm.
what comes up for me, and actually this is kind of connected to the topic that we're talking about, is this balance between the fear of being seen, which is what your post reminded me of, because
Hmm.
in order to put something out there like that, like your post, which was so incredible, and for it to be able to go viral the way it did, you had to have the courage to let yourself be seen and
Hmm.
step through the fear, and
Yep.
I think that is an interesting one because you have to put yourself out there. You have to have the first time conversations with people that maybe you've only ever seen on social media, or you have to send somebody a DM on LinkedIn and be like, I'm obsessed with you. Well, maybe not. Maybe you don't want to say that, but
Yeah.
I love your content, or, whatever you're saying is like really resonating with me.
Hmm.
And there is huge courage, I think, that is required. But once you do it, I think that the return that you get is such a reward. And it's like, compared to, let's say, the external validation that you get from a job or like in the corporate
Hmm.
world, this is something that you've created from within yourself because you've been the one to step forward and be courageous.
Hmm.
Um, and not to downplay like what you achieve in the corporate world. I mean, I think it's like there's so much good in that. And I've definitely had wonderful experiences in the past. But it hits a little bit different when you don't have the company behind you. You don't have a name, you don't have a title,
Right.
or a company name, I should say. You don't have a title, and you are just kind of standing in the dark, kind of just looking to connect with people.
No, it's so true. It's so true. I think, one thing too as well that I just learned recently too is, as you're putting these things out into the world, your babies, your ideas as part of your company, is also making sure like that you are discerning about who you get feedback from. And I
Oh
mean
my
this in the
God,
way
yes.
that, I mean, being a Pisces, I'm a sensitive lady over here, and I definitely am aware that it's not so much that if I show someone something that I want them to be like, that's the best thing in the world, but it helps when it's with people that know what you're going through, what your journey is. So if
Mm.
I was to say, show someone something like a pod episode or different things that are, new for us, I've now learned that instead of just showing it to someone external, maybe not in our environment, for their feedback, it's better to focus on showing it to people that are going through the same journey. So they understand the vulnerabilities around exposing yourself or feeling you're out there because it's very
Mm.
different, right? So not to
Hmm.
say you don't get support from loved ones or to get feedback, but in especially the infancy of your ideation and getting your product out there or getting your voice out there, I would just say learning for me is just be mindful of who you get feedback from because it can be
Yeah.
very jarring or it can be debilitating if you're, like you said, like it's not like you are, you know, working under a structure where it's not really your ideation. It's like you're selling a
Hmm.
company's product or theory or what have you. It's your own. So it's very, it can't get much more personal than that, right?
Hmm.
It's
Yeah.
part of your identity. So again, just being mindful of who you get feedback from because it can definitely impact your journey.
Yes. Oh my goodness. Yeah. I couldn't agree more. And Brene Brown says it's the people that are in the crucible with you. Those are the people to
Mm,
take feedback from. And I
yes.
think, what you've just reminded me of is the story of, someone that we both know. She's wonderful on LinkedIn. Um, and she told the story publicly of how somebody was seeing her put herself out there and stepping into the unknown every single
Mm,
day and growing in confidence and just, having such wonderful um like making such wonderful connections with
hmm
people. And this person said that it was cringe, from their perspective, it was cringe.
hmm
And I find that so interesting because like the amazing woman that's putting herself out there and like having so much success and connection and just like
hmm
living into her values of, this is who I am and I want to share myself with the world and like basically take it or leave it in the
hmm
nicest possible way. And this person said that it was cringe. And it made me think, it was like, cringe for who? Not for her. Like cringe for you
It's
maybe.
a
And it
projection.
was
It's a
very
projection.
revealing. Yeah,
hmm
it was very revealing of the
hmm
person who said that because, obviously she doesn't think it's cringe and she's totally okay with the fact. I mean, it does take huge courage, like we said, but the more you do it, the more you get used to it. And the more you're
It's true.
just like, yeah, like this
Yeah.
is just part of what I do.
hmm
And then the people who have never done it and are quaking behind the keyboards, saying that it's cringe. It's like, thank you for sharing. But unless you're also doing the same thing as me, I just it's less about really what you're telling me you're seeing and really you're sharing with me your own feelings about this and how you would
hmm
feel if you were putting yourself out there.
hmm
Discernment is a really nice way of describing it.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. But it's tough. I mean, you do expose yourself to getting all sorts of people's projections, right? And to your
Mm.
point, it is not about that person and how what
Hmm.
she or he were doing. It's more about people that respond how they feel if they are put themselves in the same place.
Hmm.
But it's hard sometimes, right? Even if you can
Mm.
logically hear that, it's like you feel that you receive that, right? When you get those
Hmm.
kind of comments. So it is
Yeah.
it's tough. It is tough.
It is. And I also wonder as well, particularly for the ones that like where we know that the advice or the feedback is well intentioned, when we know
hmm
it, like when it's somebody, like I think that person that said it was cringe, I don't think they were trying to be hurtful in that situation. I think they were just saying it because they actually thought that they were trying to be protective and they were
Mm,
actually trying to protect the person from being hurt or, um, you know, embarrassed, I guess, or, whatever it might be. Their projection, I suppose, created this need within them to caution that person, like
mhm.
caution, like to
Yeah.
put out some caution because they didn't feel like it was a safe thing to do. So it's actually quite a protective,
Mm,
defensive type move, but it is also not about that. That's like you said, it's a projection. It's you have to imagine or you have to think about where it's coming from.
mhm. With regards to feeling safe, that's obviously changed a lot. Um,
Mm.
leaving the corporate world, leaving the corporate check, leaving that financial security. So I think for me, a big part of the safety was going within myself. So I talk a lot about the nervous system, which I had definitely discounted the majority of my career. um,
Same.
it impacts your health, especially as women going through perimenopause, going through different health changes. It's so important to acknowledge the body. And so, what I didn't realize was just how out of body I was being and being reactive. I didn't have control of my energy, anything. I
Mm.
was like, I was like basically operating up here and not really inside
Hmm.
and listening to my own instincts and my own body. So I think for me, safety came back to actually like going within, taking care of my nervous system, taking care of my breath. I know we talk about cliche breath work, but it really is a thing. Like to understand yourself, that's when you're going to make decisions for yourself that are the right ones. Because if you're operating at a place that's external from you, you're not actually making decisions based off of good judgment or taking care of yourself. You're in a reactive mode. So for me, I
Mhm.
think the shift of safety went from the safety of structure, the safety of regular income to safety in myself. So learning how to take care of
Mm.
myself first. And it took a lot of unraveling, I'll be honest. Like that was the hardest part was just, okay, what do you mean? Just like taking time for myself, meditating, all the things we hear about, but it's real. I mean, when I realized just how stressed out I was and how I wasn't really listening to myself,
Mhm.
um, everything just shifted. I'm just like, okay, I can do this. At the end of the day, I'm okay. I've got a roof over my head, you know, and I've got a great partner. I've got my dogs. I've got, a great community around me. And I'm now taking care of myself. And so rooting my safety within myself really helped me make better decisions
Mhm.
and just slowing down. Like I just even how my brain works. Like I've always been like a faster thinker, a faster talker, and that still is there. It's just I don't feel like I'm making decisions as quickly and as recklessly as I used to, which means I feel like I'm making
Mm.
better decisions for myself.
Yeah. And probably more rooted in who you want to become or who you are now
Mhm.
without any of the kind of, externally imposed measures, for example, that you were talking about
Mhm.
earlier. Like you're not working to climb a ladder, you're not working to do an accomplishment that was given to you. Everything is
Mhm.
generated from within you.
Yes, exactly. How about
Yeah.
you?
For me, safety has evolved because I think when you are in a corporate kind of environment and structure, particularly when you've been in it for a long time, like both of us had been, there is a lot of safety in sameness and going
Mhm.
along with, the cult, like you're in a culture. And
Mhm.
even if the culture is lovely, like we had a great culture at Twitter and it really suited me. It was a culture of learning and development and growth. And I really believe that a lot of, my love of learning was hugely supported in that environment. And I'm really grateful for that. But I do, naturally, because you're working towards a common goal and you're part of an
Mm.
organization, there is going to be a little smoothing of the edges that happens, that naturally happens.
Mhm.
And so you may not feel as safe to completely step outside of that culture or
Right.
say something controversial, or even like one of the things we struggled with, and you remember this at Twitter, was we struggled with feedback because we always were
Mhm.
so careful to hold other people's emotions, experiences as very, very important. We didn't want to hurt anyone's feelings. It was a very respectful culture, but maybe at times it was at the, what we lost out of that or the cost of that was we didn't, perhaps share the harder feedback or the kind of more
Mhm.
direct or candid feedback that was needed. And I know that like, we've talked about that, and I think that's commonly felt by people who have worked there. And I think stepping outside of that, everything falls away and you're able to kind of express yourself in a very different way. So for me, it's
Mhm.
been about connecting to who I am beyond work. And,
Right.
what is it that I
Oh,
like to do
yes.
beyond work?
Yes.
Who am
Mhm.
I?
Mhm.
There was a fantastic LinkedIn post today by Laura Clarity, and she is, her from the Bold Group. She's an
Yes.
incredible, operations and leadership expert
Mhm.
now, but she's worked with a lot of founders and startups. And she talks about play. She talked about play today in her um, one of her LinkedIn posts, and it was so beautiful. And I thought that that really encapsulated what it's like to be an entrepreneur, because
Mhm.
I think you can be playful in the corporate world, but it's a little different because of the reasons I said, which is the structure of the culture and like everyone's swimming in the same direction, which is fine and needed. But in the entrepreneurial world, you can just play,
Mhm.
and you can be as creative as you want because you own it. And
Right.
in fact, maybe I would go so far as to say is like for me, what I've found is the entrepreneurial life has allowed me to be more creatively expressive than I've ever felt before,
Oh my
and
gosh,
safe to
yes.
be expressive
Yes.
as well, and to say, yeah, this is me and this is what I like. And I'm okay with that. I quite love that.
One thing I've really noticed in you, and which is actually a trait that I did acknowledge as well when we were working at Twitter, is you're such a like, problem solver and you just like get into the weeds. I love the fact, we talk about our bootstrapping, but you're the one
Yeah,
who's figures out all the things like as we're like getting into Canva and you just like found all these like super cool um applications and different things. Like it's just so fascinating. I've learned so much from you, but you like
that's my
lean into that
impatience.
strength. No, but I love it though. Like, you're so curious and you're letting it flourish. Like, and it's just showing up because, getting to work with you in this co-founder space.
Mm.
Yes, you are so creative and you just take it on. It's amazing. Whatever you do, whether it's again,
Oh.
like figuring out how to, you know, record a podcast or whether it's doing your own creative or whether it's writing, like all these things that you just didn't have access, like you didn't have the time before probably to just really tap into as much, right? And now you're trusting yourself in that space and letting it grow. Just so neat to watch as your friend and co-founder.
Yes. And likewise, I feel the same
Mhm.
way about you. I think when somebody is operating from a foundation of like their values, I think
Mhm.
you can see it. And I think you can energetically feel it as well, which is why,
Mhm.
even going back to our group and the community that we are part of and building too, we're building it with Bond to Bloom. And I know that you are as well with Element. You've done such incredible work with the Empower Her series in Canada, in
Mhm.
Toronto. And, it's about creating spaces that feel safe for
Mhm.
people and safe to be who they are. And
Mhm.
I mean, my goodness, calling me creative, you are like such a visionary. I swear, I've seen you in your flow. I have seen it. I have seen
Yeah.
ideas just burst forth. You're like the Trevi Fountain, which I just saw recently for the first time
Oh my
in
gosh, it's so
person.
beautiful. It's
Oh
so
my God,
beautiful.
obsessed,
Yeah.
obsessed with it. I thought it was going
Yeah.
to be small. It was enormous. It was like my
It's
highlight of Rome.
yeah.
Oh my
That
God.
that
So you're the
city is
Trevi
the
Fountain, Sid.
beauty. I'm the Trevi Fountain. Oh, all the
You're the
money in it.
treasure.
You know, all the money to transfer over too.
Yeah, exactly. Which apparently they're not allowed to do anymore, I don't think. But
Oh,
I think
oh.
it's like genuinely such a visionary. I feel like you,
Mhm,
and this is like so needed as well. I think that's why it's interesting that we've both gone down this path because we talk about strengths. We were able
mhm,
to apply these strengths in the corporate world. We were in
mhm.
sales. We were sales leaders. We were able to make it. I was actually thinking about how much money we made together. Like, if you actually put it together, it's hundreds of millions of dollars, actually, over the
Yes,
course of our careers. And now we're gonna
100%.
do that for ourselves, and we're gonna help other people
Mhm.
do it. But
Of
but
course.
I think what really just blows me away about you is you take this strength of being a visionary, that's you to a T, and you imagine what is possible. And then I've seen you literally go from imagining what is possible to then climbing the stairs to doing it and to actually envisioning what is necessary for it to become
Mm,
real. And
yes.
that is so cool to be around. And can you imagine, like, no wonder we're feeling this sense of creativity and expression and whatever
Oh.
when we're spending this time together?
Yeah, we really should, Ames, on one of our upcoming episodes, bring in someone who really is knowledgeable on human design. Because when you really lead
Oh.
into your human design, so I'm a projector, so that's my human design based on my birth charts, what have you,
Hmm.
and I'm a projector to a T. So I am like, this is the idea, this is the vision. Now I need somebody else to go and actually like make it happen because I'm not as good at the
Yes,
executing part. I'm better at the ideas
me
part.
too.
So honestly, when you're building a business with people, it's very important to understand their human design because if you have a bunch of projectors, not a lot's going to get done versus you need to have
Yes.
manifestors, you need to have generators, right? So we should definitely think about someone who can come in and talk to them more.
Love
I'm
that.
definitely not like fully educated, but as I've again been on the self-discovery tour,
Hmm.
seeing aspects about myself, just like you're learning about yourself as well, it's so
Hmm.
important to then as you're building a matrix, right? How
Mm.
you fit into that matrix because
Hmm.
everyone brings their own gifts, right? If you had all the same kind of skill sets, it wouldn't
Hmm.
work. You need
Hmm.
to have different people complement each other as they
Yeah.
build a business.
And I think we do that with Bond to Bloom quite well in the
Oh my
sense that
gosh.
you and Danielle and I
Yes.
have different strengths and we look at things
Mhm.
differently. And I think it's such a lovely example of, and I think what I love most about it actually is the fact that we feel safe. Speaking of,
Mhm.
safety, we feel safe enough to, maybe say, this is not an area that I enjoy working in, or, I don't light up when I'm doing this, or, but I'm quite happy to lean in this area or help with
Mhm.
this.
Mhm.
And, for me, I have a son, and, so sometimes like the scheduling thing kind of can get to me at times, particularly, this week,
Mhm.
with Easter. And, I feel very supported and very, very safe to be able to tell you and Danielle if I'm not able to make something work, or if there is just something that's blocking me being able to get it done because I have, something going on with my family or with my son. And that
Mhm.
really adds to a sense of safety, because
Mhm.
that way I'm able to show up as my full self. And a massive part of my full self is being a mom, and,
Yes.
prioritizing that. And it
Mhm.
has to be prioritized, not because I feel like I need to. I was thinking about this weekend, but I really just want to. Like, even when we think about travel for work, for example,
Mhm.
part of me, there's so many parts of me, but like part of me is so thrilled to go travel for work and be with you ladies and
Mhm.
meet people in person and, go for nice dinners and do things like the event, in March, where we were able to feel that sense of recognition and accomplishment and, connection.
Mhm.
And then another part of me is like, be very careful about making decisions about your travel, because you know what's going to happen. You're going to overschedule yourself, and then you're going to cry because you had to leave your son for 3 nights.
Oh.
So it's a battle, to be like, which part of Amy is like making this
Yeah.
decision.
Well, but it's good though at that point. I mean, fine tuning it too, right? Like, I feel as we're navigating our travel schedule, I know we're mapping out our events across, Ontario and Canada, and as well in the UK
Hmm.
right now for the rest of the year. And now that we've had phase one, we now know, as you're, with your iterations, what's important for you time wise. And we work around that. I mean, just recently with Danielle and I in the ice storm, for example, I mean, you were so supportive of me too,
Yeah.
because you're going to have life things that happen. Right. And I think that's the difference too. I remember being so upset because I was here and we had no power for 5 days and we had our first Bond of Bloom
Hmm.
event coming up the following week. And I remember just feeling so guilty because I wasn't pulling my weight. And like in another corporate job, I might be like, oh my
Mm.
gosh, like they're going to think I'm MIA. I'm not really like, I'm not working. I'm just slacking off over here. And I
Mm.
remember being in tears on one of my voice notes to you because I think we were trying to prep X, Y, and Z. And I literally didn't have Wi Fi. Like I didn't even have access to anything. And I couldn't leave here because there was just so much destruction.
Hmm.
And I had a call with you and you just set me right away. I just felt such relief because you're like, this is important. Like you need to take care of yourself first and your home and
Hmm.
all these things. And I just
And that
right
was a
away,
big
right
deal.
away felt at ease. And same with Danielle, her beautiful new home. Like she, it's
I
hard
know.
because life happens
It
sometimes,
is.
right? And just to have the grace to be like, okay, I
Hmm.
know that I had that support from my people.
Hmm. Absolutely. And you raise an
Mhm.
interesting point, because, you know, of course, I know, knowing you and knowing how much you want to contribute, I think that's definitely one of the values that I see in you, because you're the type of person that if you commit to something, you do it with your full heart. You, care deeply about showing up in a way that has big impact, and you like things to be fair, and you like to be able to um feel like you're contributing as much as everybody else. But there will be times when an ice storm happens,
Mhm.
and, that you're not going to be able to work the 12
Mhm.
hours of the day that you really want to, because you love that feeling of contributing and it's really
Mhm.
important to you. But also, I'm glad that you were able to, you know, feel a sense of ease, knowing that your value isn't in what you're contributing either.
Mhm.
Like, if it is what it is, right? Ice storms will happen. And also, the other thing about, being an entrepreneur is that we have the autonomy to be able to make
Mhm.
decisions that work for us. And
Right.
so it's interesting, like with this topic being fear, and fear of uncertainty and fear of the unknown, it's very interesting to kind of play that against the control that we have as entrepreneurs, and the control and autonomy that we have in dictating our day, in dictating our month and our year, and really how we navigate the unknown.
Mhm.
Because there you go, like an ice storm, massive unknown. You had no idea that was going to be so destructive and impactful to you, and to like
Right.
stop your Wi-Fi, stop you from doing this and that.
Mhm.
But yet you're an entrepreneur and you're able to pivot, and it's your company. And so it kind of helps with the fear, I suppose, in a way, because you know that you're going to be able to trust yourself, that you'll
Mhm.
do what you can do, and that's it.
Just to recap our discussion today, because there's so many great nuggets here, I think, as we venture into this series we're doing. I think the big 3 areas for me leaving the corporate world and redefining my identity as an entrepreneur, I'd say the first one is this sense of identity, who I am
Mm,
outside of a corporate job, and how I have many facets to myself that exist beyond just my career. Second being validation, where I get it from. So shifting away from that validation from, say, those OKRs, those, the revenue I'm bringing in, to validation from myself and from the community I choose. And then third one would be building my community. So again, you and I talk
mm,
a lot about this, the gratitude we have around the community we've surrounded ourselves in the last 6+ months, and how I think we're here today because of that community as well, and the support we've received through it. So those are the 3 things for me, I think, that are the biggest um, ahas, and excited to have those grow further.
they're lovely. I think what I'm taking away from this conversation about the fear of the unknown, or the fear of uncertainty, which I tell you, I do grapple with, and I think it's
Hmm.
probably the work of my life to, continue to navigate it and work through it, is this sense of balance between the fear of the unknown and the joy of the unknown. Does that
Mm,
make sense? So
it
like
does.
it can be
Leaning into it. You're
right? Like
leaning
it can
into
be really
it.
scary.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like, so it's very scary. Things can be very scary if they're unknown, but they can also be incredibly exciting. And
Hmm.
they say that anxiety and excitement live in the same part of the body, or they feel very similar. And so I think when I think about tackling the unknown, I constantly am trying to remind myself that the unknown doesn't mean that it's bad. It doesn't mean that it's unsafe. Just because, it's uncertain doesn't mean that something bad is going to happen necessarily. And it's really shifting my mindset around that and moving into, if it's unknown, it could actually be really interesting. It could be a new discovery. It could be a
Hmm.
new exploration. And so it's just kind of trying to, shift my thinking and my perspective around the unknown itself. And maybe it could be the joy of discovery versus the fear,
Hmm.
of the unknown.
Hmm.
So that's kind of staying with me a little bit as we finish up this episode. And I think what we should also say is, if anybody wants to find out a little bit more about us, they can check the show notes. And I also would invite anybody that likes this to subscribe and to give us a rating as well. And hopefully we'll catch you next time.